What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video.
The prisoner's name is Romel Broom. In 2009, he was scheduled to be executed by lethal injection. Some people thought it was too humane for someone who kidnapped and killed a 14-year-old girl. But during the procedure, Broom himself became a victim of cruel and unusual punishment. He spent 2 hours writhing in pain. That's because executioners failed to locate a suitable vein on the man's body and stuck needles into him in 18 different places. However, Broom survived, and his execution date was postponed indefinitely. And he's not alone in American history. But if Broom had been sentenced to death, for example, in Japan, he wouldn't have managed to survive. There, a death sentence is imposed in extreme cases, and the process can't be stopped even if a person is suffering. How would you feel if you knew you were going to die the next day? Why is it better to eat your last meal? And which country is better to choose for your execution, Japan or the USA? Where is it better to spend your last hours before the execution? In Japan, you won't be informed of your execution day until the very last day. One morning, you'll just be told that the time has come, and you'll only be allowed to sit in the cell for a while to get your head around it. Next, they'll probably take you to the prayer room or give you the opportunity to talk to your loved ones? No, to a prison official at most. You may be allowed to write your last letter, but there will be very tight time limits for all of that. In the execution chamber, a prison governor will once again officially announce that the death penalty will be carried out, in case you don't understand. None of your family or friends, unfortunately, can be present. Not that no one loved you or something, it's just that in Japan, the prisoner's lawyers and family are not informed about the execution until it's over. There's no such law in the US. Moreover, you have the right to choose which of your loved ones you want to see. In some states, you can also choose your last meal, but not in Texas. In 2011, a sentenced prisoner, Lawrence Russell Brewer, made a very large order consisting of 2 chicken fried steaks, a pizza, a pound of barbecue with a loaf of white bread, a cheeseburger, a cheese omelet, a few snacks, desserts, and drinks. But after receiving the food he requested, Brewer refused to eat, claiming he wasn't hungry. So the bonus was eliminated for everyone. It turns out that Brewer screwed the others with his stunt, but who doesn't make mistakes? Even during the execution, they occur frequently. Where is it impossible to make mistakes during the execution? Lethal injection was considered painless and the most advanced method of execution in the US until studies by National Public Radio showed the opposite. NPR analyzed over 200 autopsy reports of inmates executed in various states in almost 30 years. 84% of those executed showed signs of pulmonary edema. This means that executed prisoners didn't die instantly, but tried to breathe and suffered terrible torments. But what caused the pulmonary edema? The main reason is extremely high doses of drugs injected quickly. They directly damage the delicate lung structure. Plus, many states use low-quality drugs for lethal injections and often avoid anesthesia. So, just imagine, you've chosen the safest and fastest way to die, but now you feel like you're suffocating, and it feels like you're drowning. And the crazy thing is,
I love that fucking movie, bro. Law Abiding Citizen, 10 out of 10. Watch it.
Administer the injection, so it's often done by inexperienced people. In Japan, there's no such thing because they don't give any injections. Instead, they hang their prisoners. But even during hanging, things can get out of hand. If the rope is too long, you could be beheaded. And if it's too short, suffocation will take more than half an hour.
Wait, how can you be beheaded if it's too long?
It depends on executioners. For example, your weight. It has to be large enough to cause a quick neck fracture. Otherwise, you'll die a slow death in the noose. And nobody will stop this process. In Japan, no one ever seems to go on strike to protest particularly brutal methods of execution. And if the US Supreme Court is seriously considering abolishing even lethal injections, in Japan, execution is just not a social problem. But why? Where can you hope for?
Fucking Americans are fucking soft, that's
Japan
why.
introduced the death penalty under the influence of China back in the 4th century. In those days, people were not only hanged, but also quartered, beheaded, and drowned.
Yeah, beheaded is crazy
With the
though.
spread of Buddhism, the use of capital punishment was temporarily suspended in Japan. However, both world wars made things go back to the way they were. Although more than 70 years have passed since then, most Japanese still support the continuing use of the death penalty. And the main feature of the Japanese sentence is that it's almost impossible to challenge. In Japan, they only execute people for particularly serious crimes involving victims.
That makes
and the more
sense.
victims there are, the greater the chance of being executed. But if you truly believe in your innocence and intend to appeal, you need to know when you're going to be executed. This is necessary in order to indicate the date in your application. And the time between sentencing and execution ranges from 2 to more than 20 years depending on the case. It's a different story in the US. The practice of capital punishment was brought there by English colonists. It was needed as a tool for creating a new order. That's why people were executed for literally everything: stealing grapes, killing chicks, or innocent trade with indigenous tribes. However, the public could stand up for something like that. That's what happened to Joseph Samuel in the 18th century. He was sentenced to be hanged.
Definitely says 17th century, bro. Okay.
3 times. The first time, the rope snapped. The second time, the noose slipped off his neck and Samuel's feet touched the ground. And the third time, the rope snapped again. The crowd thought it was divine intervention that was saving Samuel, so his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment instead. Today, you don't have to rely on God. You can try to protect yourself by making an appeal. Over the past decade, about 800 people have received either a pardon or a commutation of sentence by their own efforts and with the help of lawyers. But if the appeal doesn't work for some reason, you still have a chance to choose how you'll be executed. Or not. Where do you have a choice of how to be executed? In the US, where human rights come first, they've always tried to improve execution methods. So, hangings were done away with when, in the 19th century, the state of New York built the first electric chair.
That thing's so fucking painful, bro.
Execution method. But later, it turned out the chair was not much better. Believe me, you wouldn't want to experience such an alternative. When your eyeballs pop out, your body
getting tased is bad enough.
defecates, and you vomit blood and drool. You're probably just better off suffocating in an execution gas chamber. At present, this type of execution exists only in the state of Missouri. So if you're sentenced to death there, you can expect to end up alone in a special sealed capsule. The chamber will then be closed and filled with hydrogen cyanide. Your task is to breathe deeply to reduce your suffering and to avoid the fate of Carl Chessman. In 1960, before his execution, he told reporters that he would nod his head if he felt pain. Witnesses claimed that Chessman nodded his head for a few minutes. Perhaps if he knew it was possible, he'd have chosen a firing squad. Today, this method is used, for example, in Idaho and Utah prisons.
Damn, they still use this?
First, you'll be strapped to a chair and placed in front of a canvas wall. The chair will be surrounded by sandbags to absorb the blood that will scatter in different directions. You'll be blindfolded so you don't see 4 shooters standing in an enclosure 20 feet away, pointing their rifles through a slot in the canvas and shooting at you. Nowadays, in different states of the US, a prisoner has the right to choose the type of execution. As for Japan, you have no choice there. In Japan,
fucking
only
stupid, bro.
hanging is practiced. That's probably the way it was historically, plus it's a low-cost method that involves minimum blood.
That's valid.
What I thought was the most unfair execution in the history of both countries, and I think I found it. I'm talking about the case of an American, George Stinney Jr. He was accused of killing 2 girls and executed in the electric chair. He had no right to appeal, no choice, nothing. It was 1944. The boy was 14 years old.
God damn, bro. Alright, have a good one, guys. Take care. Don't get executed. In my opinion, I would choose USA because we're a bunch of softies. Take care.